All right, guys, so today we're going to be looking at solving linear equations with fractions. I know how much everybody loves fractions, right? So today we're going to figure out a way to get rid of the fraction so you don't have to deal with it. So when you have a linear equation with fractions, you got to remember a couple of things. First of all, to get rid of the fraction, you can multiply the entire equation by the LCD, which is the lowest common denominator. So to find the lowest common denominator, what that is, it's basically the number that can be divided by all the denominators. The smaller it is, the easier it is to work with, which is why they call it the lowest common denominator, because the lower it is, the better it is for you. So we'll go over how to find that in a minute. And then lastly, side note, if you can't figure out what the LCD is, if you don't know what it is, if you multiply all the different denominators together, so all the different numbers that appear in the denominators, then that number will always work. So if you were to be using a calculator, basically an easy way to do this is multiply all the different denominators together, and that number will always work, and you'll always get the correct answer. So let's go over some examples on solving linear equations with fractions. So I wrote 3 examples for you guys, example 1, 2, and 3. So example number 1, let's say we want to solve for n in this example. You want to get the n by itself on one side, but the issue is that we have a denominator in this case. The denominator is equal to 5. We only have 1. That's a good thing. So we only have to deal with that 1, 5. So the thing we have to do is multiply the whole entire equation. And I do mean the whole entire equation. So the first term and the second term and the term at the very end after the equal sign by 5. And this in turn will actually get rid of the fraction. And you'll see how in a second. So we have 5 multiplied by 2, so 5 parentheses 2, plus 5 multiplied by 2n, so 5 parentheses 2n, it's equal to 5 parentheses 24. So multiply this by 24, and then we're going to be getting something that's a little more simplified for us. So if you multiply 5 times 2, you get 10. If you multiply 5 times 2n, oh, I actually forgot something. So this 5 times 2n is actually divided by 5. So when I multiply the 5 and with the fraction, make sure you guys put it on top. You're actually multiplying the numerator, not multiplying the denominator at all. So I just put the 5 on top, 5 times 2n, and then put that over 5 and dropped it down here. Notice that the 5 and the 5 on the bottom cancel out, so they go away. And then on the right hand side, I get 5 times 24, which gave me 120. So we're left with something nice now. So we have 10 plus 2n equals 120. It looks kind of crowded, so I'm going to rewrite it down here. 10 plus 2n equals 120. Now this equation we know how to solve. We've done it before, so it's not that bad now. So the tricky part is the beginning. So what are we going to multiply the whole entire thing by? And that number is 5. So if we do the wall line down the equal sign and then subtract 10 on both sides, the rest of the problem is pretty simple to do since you've done it before. So we get 2n is equal to 120 minus 10 is 110. And then divide by 2. We get n is equal to 55. So that is our first answer for example number 1. So example number 2. Same idea. The only issue with example number 2 is that we have 2 denominators. So we have the 5 and we have the 10. Again, the LCD is the number that can be divided by the denominators that appear. So what number can you think that can be divided by the 5 and can be divided by the 10? So the only number that I can think of, well, there's many different numbers. There's 20 that you can divide. You can divide the 20 by 5 and by 10. There's 30, you can divide those by those two. 40, 50, 60, those all can be divided by 5 and 10, but we want the lowest common denominator, so I'm going to go with the 10. If you notice, 10 can be divided by 10, and 10 can also be divided by 5. So we're going to multiply by the LCD, and that number is actually going to be 10 this time. So to multiply everything by the 10. So if you multiply this by 10, you're going to get 10 parentheses 12x, and then put that guy over 5 because it was originally over 5. We're going to subtract 10 multiplied by 2x. And then lastly, we have 10 multiplied by 3 and then divided by 10. You could multiply it out and then try to figure out what the answers are on top, but I'd rather just work with this right now and then cancel stuff that I can cancel. So for example, I can see here that if I divide 10 by 5, I get a nice number. And also here, if I divide 10 by 10, I get a nice number. So if I divide 10 by 5, I get 2. And that number came out of the division. So I'm just going to write 2 here in green. And then I have to multiply that by 12x. I'm going to subtract this number. 10 times 2 is 20, so 20x. And then that's equal to, well, 10 divided by 10, that crosses out. Or you can think that is a 1. So it's 1 multiplied by 3 as the final thing that's on the right-hand side. So all that craziness in the beginning of the problem just becomes this, which is easy to work with because now we just simplify. So 2 times 12 is 24, so 24x minus 20x is equal to 3 times 1, which is 3. 24 minus 20 is just 4, so basically we get 4x is equal to 3. Divide both sides by 4, and you are done. So the answer is 3 over 4. Don't freak out if you get a fraction as your answer. That is totally fine. Fractions are numbers, and you love to. Okay, example number 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 denominators, and out of those 4 denominators, there's 3 different numbers. So we have a 2, a 3, and a 6. So you have to think hard about what number can you multiply that can be divided by 6, that can be divided by 3, and that can be divided by 2. So the answer to that, the lowest number that it can be is actually 6. However, I'm going to pretend like I didn't know that. So I'm going to say I have no idea. I don't even know what the heck, what number can be divided by that, and that. So worst comes to worst and you have no idea how to find the number that can be divided by all of them, you could always just multiply the different numbers together and that'll give you your LCD. For example, here my LCD, I can multiply 2, 3, and 6. So 2 times 3, and then multiply that by 6. Notice that I'm only using the different ones, so I already have 2 sets of 3, so I'm not even going to count the other one. So just a different one. So 2, 3, 6. That's all I need. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. So basically the answer is 36. So if I multiply the whole entire thing by 36, I will get the correct answer, which is the same answer as if you were to multiply the whole entire thing by 6, which is the lowest common denominator. So one of the common denominators is 36. Another one is 6. But like I said, we're going to go with 36 just for the heck of it, just so you can see that it works out either way. So, oh wait, I said 36. So let's put a 3 in front. So multiply the first term, second term, third term, and the last term by 36. And then we're going to be doing some simplification. So 36 is going to be multiplied, so parentheses, 8x, and then we're going to put that over 3. And then we're going to add 36, and that's going to be multiplied with 3, and then we're going to put that over 2. And then we're going to add it to 36, and that's going to be multiplied by 2, and then put that over 3. And that's going to be equal to 36, and then parentheses, negative 23 divided by 6. So I'm not going to simplify or multiply yet. I want to leave it in this form. That way we can simplify some stuff that can be divided further. So if I actually concentrate on the division of these guys right here, so divide these two, divide these two, divide these two, and divide these two, I should get pretty nice numbers. So 36 divided by 3 actually gives me 12. So I'm just going to replace this thing with a 12. And then that 12 has to be multiplied by 8x. And then I move on to the next one. So 36 divided by 2, that will give me 18. So I replace that with an 18. And then that's going to be multiplied by 3. And then I'm going to add it to 36 divided by 3, which again, we did that earlier. That's going to be 12. And that's going to be multiplied by 2. And then 36 divided by 6, that gives me 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. And then that's going to be multiplied by the negative 23. So it is a pretty long process, but it's basically just a lot of calculator work that you could do, and then it simplifies out to something nice. So 8 times 12 will give you 96. So that's 96x. 18 times 3 is 56. Let me double check that. 54, close enough. So plus 54 plus 2 times 12, which is 24, and then 6 times 23. By the way, I'm using a calculator, so don't feel bad if you have to use one as well. And then, so we got this from the simplification. 96x plus 54 plus 24 equals negative 138. So this becomes a problem that we know how to do, right? So we do the simplification of combining like terms first before anything. So 54 plus 24, that is 78. I'm just going to drop the 96 down. So plus 78. And that came from these guys. And then that's equal to negative 138. So line down the equal sign. We know how to solve this by now, right? We're going to subtract 78 on both sides. Minus 78 minus 78. This goes away. We get 96 on this side. X is equal to 138 and 78. If we add those two together, we get 216 negative. So negative, we have more negative, and then we get a negative answer. So lastly, we divide this by 96. So if we divide this number by 96, we get a fraction, which is like 2 point whatever. But you could always just leave it in simplified form as a fraction. I'd rather you guys leave it as a fraction than a decimal, actually. So negative 216, let's try to simplify that. So 216, let's divide that by 6 and divide this by 6. And let's see what we get. So on top we get 36 negative. On the bottom we get 16. So I can still go a little bit further. I can divide this a little more. So if I divide 36, what goes into it? Maybe 3. Yeah, let's do that. So if I divide top and bottom by 3, I get negative 12 on top. On the bottom, I get... Oh, crud. Just kidding. We're going to make that into a 2, so it goes into it nicely. So that's going to be an 18. So 3 didn't go into the bottom number, so that's going to turn into an 18, negative 18 on top. On the bottom, 16 divided by 2, that's actually 8. Oh, crap. We can do it again. Cool. So divide this by 2 again. I thought we were done. Okay, so divide this by 2. We get negative 9 over 4 as our final answer. Anyways, but the important stuff is the beginning of the problem. That's the part that you actually don't know how to do. Find the LCD, the lowest common denominator. Multiply the whole entire thing by it. Simplify. You get a linear equation that you can solve. And at the end, if you get a fraction, don't freak out because it's possible.